The reason why I did tools was because nothing was changing. I just love building. I love the fact that on a bad day, something gets done. On a good day, it is liberating because you just see what manpower, people power can achieve. I look at the world as being just real life Lego. It's just so joyful.
Hello and welcome to the Building Sciology Potty, where we talk about better buildings to live and breathe in. My name is Jess Kismet and I am your host. Today I am joined by a man who has taken innovation in the building industry into the most practical, tangible and needed space. I'm delighted to be talking today to Jerry Tyrrell, the man who has created a visual building code. You wouldn't read about it. If you haven't heard of the app Tools and you're in the construction industry, go to your app store right now or your Play Store and download the app and take a tour. In an industry full of practical, hands-on people, it baffles me that it's taken so long for a resource like this to appear. Jerry's construction industry experience is extensive and he's turning that experience and knowledge into something really, truly useful and revolutionary. And I am super keen to find out more. Welcome, Jerry.
Hello, Jess. Thank you for the intro.
No worries. All right. So could you please tell us a bit about you? Your credentials list is long and I would love to hear a little bit about your professional history and journey to today.
And there's no ego about this, Jess, that everybody who's doing things has got wonderful resumes. And I would say shout out to all of the listeners there. Please build your resume. Please do something important and not for ego purposes. I started as a labourer when I was 17. I moved into being a self-employed painter when I was 19. We bought a few terraces in inner city Sydney when I was 23, and we started renovating those and doing DIY and owner-builder licenses. I did train as an architect, became a builder when I was 24. I've been probably a craftsman. I'd like to think I've been seeking craft knowledge all of my life, and we'll talk further about just the implications of craft on our industry. Obviously, I've had a lot to do with the inspection of buildings and building quality across Australia and the suite of standards. I've written a few books. I've created some first aid products when my 4-week-old niece died, sadly. I've had a mixed bag. Tools leaves everything for dead as far as potential societal benefit, and I didn't do it for me. I did it basically because it's an overdue asset the community needs.
I couldn't agree more. When I first came across this app, I was like gobsmacked that I hadn't even thought of, that this could be so helpful and that someone had thought of it and gone and really committed to creating something so useful in an industry of people who are good with their hands and not necessarily good reading technical documents.
Cool. And I agree completely. How many times, I'm sure the listeners this will resonate with the listeners, how many times on site have we sort of spoken together, we've collaborated, we've drawn pictures. I was a master of 3D sketches on bits of fibro, on cardboard, on something that was going to be covered up, putting pieces of material together. We talk a visual language. It's such an exciting place to be. And if anything that comes from today, I just want us to just respect for the fact that all of us have built every part of what you see around you. We've built Australia successfully using primitive visual skills and a songline of craft.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, every time you ask a tradesman or a builder to explain something to you, straight away they'll get out a pencil and they'll draw it for you. It's a very visual group of people. So thank you for your innovation. So tell us a bit about the app, how it works. $15 million has been invested into the development of this app. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. And you sort of think, well, why hasn't this been done by somebody else? But it hasn't. It's a very simple dual platform. You log on. In most cases, you can graphically navigate. You can search by text. On the app itself, you can voice search. We're cleaning up a lot of the search function and we will have an AI search pretty quickly, but you're essentially able to ask anything and ideally get an illustration and also some relevant text-based material back at you. But most of the time, you're just validating. You're checking something, you're validating a dimension. Somebody's giving you a BS on site and you just want to basically show that you know as much as any tradesman, any craftsman, if you're a designer, or you're an apprentice and your boss is doing it the wrong way with fire seals and any of the things that have changed since he did his apprenticeship. And you can, in under 12 seconds, find most of the technical aspects and the quality standards that you need to build Australia well.
12 seconds. Have you timed that?
It's less.
Is
The
that
graphic
what you come up with?
navigation. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I use the homepage the whole time because I'm visual. Sorry. I mean, I did okay at school, but I hated it. I hated reading. I put things down in point form. I essentially was a walking artificial intelligence person that the teacher said, "Oh, you've got to write more words." No, I put it in point form and drew it. And now I just essentially delivered all the knowledge that has been shared with me. I've delivered in a visual form for the tradespeople and the designers of the future.
So you said there's a voice function, a voice search. How easy is that? It's like whenever I want to know a question these days, since the beginning of ChatGPT, which only happened, relatively speaking, 5 minutes ago, I pick up my phone and I speak into it and I get an answer straight away. So you've got a voice function as well.
Sure. So I search, and I'm not saying there's cold, hard content here. So if anybody doesn't think that this doesn't have the majority of the answers that you need, you're wrong. The search process, we are improving the whole time. But as soon as I press search at the top, the microphone comes up on the bottom. And all I do is I just press that and type in fire door, or I type in latch, glazing latch, or a side panel, or I type in class 2 formwork, and it will then load what you want from there. And because the content's becoming more and more complete and complex, it takes away the need to go through the graphic navigation.
Fantastic. And the building code is currently paused nationally. And the reasoning behind that, as I understand it, is to simplify and even use AI to summarize and make the building code shorter and easier to navigate. Have they called you and been like, "Hey, Jerry, can we use your app?"
No, they haven't. Now, I really like the ABCB. I mean, I've been sniping at them because I think they've got a lot of things wrong. But their aim to build Australia well is fantastic. But that could be said in those 7 words: build Australia well, everybody. I think they've got the absolute noble objective, but they've got most of it wrong. They've made it much too complex. They've given the industry that likes pictures and graphics words, and now they're fiddling around with minor tweaks, and it looks as though it's a disorganized shambles. And there's a lot of pressure behind it too, Jess. There's a lot of political pressure behind supposedly the cost of building. My spin to all of you listeners out there, it is so much cheaper to build well to start off with. Besides the carbon saving, the maintenance saving, the FM saving, a whole raft of issues that come home to roost when you sell a property, it is so much cheaper. So if any of the associations squeaking about the cost of building, tell them it's all nonsense. Just build properly to start off with.
Oh, absolutely. Get it right the first time. Get it right the first time. So you're moving tools into educational institutions, which is fantastic. There is not enough training particularly in my industry, in the energy efficiency sort of, building science space. There's not enough information at architecture school or trade school for the people who are going to be building Australia. And so I put a lot of energy of my own into this training and trying to get into TAFEs myself and getting into in universities and getting these people while they're still students. So you are doing the same thing. What's the response been like?
Look, it's been slow but very sure. So most people get that this is the digital transformation that's overdue. And if you think, it's hard enough teaching basic craft skills, but when you're getting into the energy efficiency and Section J and some of the stuff that you and I've seen your podcast with Tim Law, that there are so many people who are trying to communicate what the NCC wants us to understand badly, then I can assure you that tools is going to be one of the ways by which most core knowledge is simplified, taught extremely well, and there's then bandwidth for the quite scientific aspects of what you're trying to say, which is carbon management, energy efficiency. It is a completely confusing landscape on how tradesmen make a building comply with Section J, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So what do you think the most common root causes of these defects that we find in the Australian construction industry are? Is it a knowledge problem? Is it a training problem? Is it a cultural problem? What do you think's happening?
I think it's know-how. I think that if you look at, we've got a long list of people supporting us, and the reason why I think the TAFEs are on board is because they recognise that they are the gatekeepers of the primary knowledge, and then you've got the master builders, and you've got the certifiers, and you've got associations that then take it further. Most of the problem is about the songline of craftsmanship that is being increasingly lost instead of us all being reminded and taught about it and reinforced, but reinforced at different layers. So the first time you go into TAFE, it is a story that is consistent with second year as an apprentice. If you do your Cert 4, if you do a design course, the details that you're seeing in all aspects of that are the details that you're going to be constructing, and they're all compliant. So that's why the single know-how of the craft of building, it's almost like just a simple formula. We're all building the same thing, and it's all got to do with knowledge throughout the whole process.
Mm-hmm. Do you go onto sites now? What's the process? Like, people buy your app and they use it, and do you actually visit construction sites to like assist at all, or are you mostly developing the app behind the scenes?
Look, it's a whole combination of different applications of the app. I personally apply it, but when I'm on site, my brother calls it JI. It's Jerry Intelligence. So obviously tools is not needed because I'm there. But if I need to show people, like we have a set out tool that tells people to be consistent. You're a designer. If you haven't documented a switch plate height and an air conditioning control, then people will haphazardly locate them. Whereas I want them centered. I want a 1 meter meridian. I want to have everything basically consistent. So if I'm not on a site, I want people to be able to pull out any tool and essentially have me and thousands of other craftsmen giving them exactly how it should be done. But basically tools relies on applying tools at all aspects of what you're doing. So if it's not documented, everything else missing between the grid lines, between the dimensions, between any of the technical schedules, everything else is tools. So it picks up the missing pieces. So the designer refers to it. They use best tools. It's on their drawing in a code block. The developer requires everybody to use tools because it's their quality safeguard. The contractor is always applying tools and telling people to do it. The certifiers have already got tools embedded in their DNA. So it's an ecosystem of talking the same thing, Jess. It's a no-brainer. We polls at 5 courses, drain cavity, sloping sills, head flashings that extend past reveals. So this is not rocket science, but it's a neglected part of most parts of construction.
Wouldn't it be good if there was you could just put a link, and I'm sure this is already doable. You get your PDF, you can add links to PDFs, and you just have a link. Like, click on this link to see this detail, and it goes straight to the detail in tools.
It does. We've already got that.
Brilliant.
So you have
you
got
can
a
already
QR
incorporate
code.
the exact code reference and technical drawing on your plan set.
Yeah, so that we have a Revit plugin. So it's very simple for anybody to embed it. But I essentially want everybody to be thinking, if I don't know it, I'll check it. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I don't want to do is go on site anymore and see failure. And failure is when a defect is slipped through that nobody wanted.
And can homeowners use this app as well?
Yeah, we're not.
If they're thinking, oh, my Tyler hasn't done that waterproofing properly, or I don't know, if they think that there's something that their builder or their tradie has missed. It's time for a quick sponsor shout out. Today's episode of the Building Psychology Potty is proudly brought to you by our amazing sponsors, Enduro Builders and ClimaSure. A huge thank you to these incredible businesses for supporting the podcast and helping us spread the word about better buildings to live and breathe in. Your support makes this podcast possible. Please head over to their websites and follow their social pages.
Bingo. So you can get 3 free screens a month forever if you want to. So if you're a homeowner, you can decide to go on and just compare what you're looking at with what it should be. But ideally, you've told your contractor, if it's a DIY project, you're taking some ownership of, which even if it's not a DIY, you want to take ownership of any building project, that ideally you've called up tools. You said to the tradies, look, please do it in accordance with tools and you'll have no trouble at all personally for what you're doing, but also you'll have no trouble with me and any of the inspectors who are coming to have a look at the work.
Mm.
So it is just such a simple way to keep quality.
Yeah. And, just to be such a usable interface for anybody, not just people in the industry, but for
Yeah, and
homeowners.
yeah, now the other point too is that the DIYs can just take it for 2 months if they want to. They pay $30 a month and they've got it there as the safeguard. And what I
Uh-huh.
find is, especially, and I'm not sexist at all, but especially women, they like the detail. They like to
Yes.
know exactly how things are going.
Yeah.
Designers are only really putting guidelines on their drawings. Quite often the meat and potatoes are missing.
Mm. Yeah. It's often up to the trades to fill in the blanks, isn't it?
To get it
The
wrong,
builders. Yeah.
sadly, unintentionally.
So what do you think actually helps people learn and change in this industry? Because we are a bit of a slow moving, fixed mindset, I would kind of say, for a proportion of the industry kind of people. What do you think is going to help people evolve and learn and accept? Because I think admitting that you're right, I've heard builders say before that they don't, when you learn something new, it sort of makes you doubt everything you've done before and feel bad for all the projects you've done before when you didn't know. So
Look,
what do you think is going to help change that or help people move forward?
you and people like you, there's a general apathy. I call them frogs. It's as though we're all sitting there waiting for something else to happen.
Uh-huh.
And it hasn't happened on my watch. The reason why I did tools was because nothing was changing. So the starting point is individual sort of acceptance and taking responsibility for the problem that we're in, which is a 50 billion. So for all of you listening, it's costing everybody in Australia about $50 billion a year for productivity, rework, mistakes, unnecessary QA, conflicts, and pain and shame. So it's a real economic downer to our GDP. Now that can so easily be changed by attitude. They say that the students don't care. Well, why aren't we giving them an educational experience, which is wonderful, which is why tools is a really great asset? That on the job site, it just can't be, she'll be right. It can't be Jerry building, excuse the pun. It basically needs to be, we want to build this correctly the whole time. And any quality system is purely about validation, verification that the work was done really well. But I don't want to lecture the group there. We can all fix this together. And I just think that I hope that's going to come about because of tools and podcasts like yours, Jess.
I hope so too. I think that anyone listening to this podcast is already going over and above what they need to do, and they're already interested in learning. So I hope so too. The industry often feels fragmented, where we have designers and architects over here and builders here and consultants here and the homeowner over here, and not really communicating super well, sort of working in siloed environments. It can happen so easily. I think it's partially human nature to just sort of get on with what you're doing and not really worry about everything else around you. But in the construction industry, collaboration is so important. So how do you see apps like yours, data, shared systems, helping to bridge those gaps?
Well, I think you picked it, just saying this sort of siloed approach. See, I think that because I'm an architect, I'm a tradesman, I love science. I love working with engineers. I love reading the back of, I don't like reading, but I like reading the technical stuff that means that we get the job right. What I have said, and you may or may not have seen my images, I think that there's a trilogy when we build. There's a combination of beauty, which is the designers and architects. There's a combination of craft, which is the tradies and the contractors and the supervisors. And then there are the scientists, which are the certifiers and the engineers. It takes all three of them. Of course, I love the beauty part of a city. I love spaces that resonate and inspire. But none of that comes about unless the science is right, unless the craftsmen really know what they're doing. And they're all, I'm just saying to all of you who think you're better than anybody else in that trio, you're not. Everyone depends upon somebody else to make sure that the building product becomes superb. And I think tools sits at the centerpiece as far as the technical content that might be missing in so much of the rubbish and the mistakes that I have to look at.
What keeps you motivated, Jerry? You've spent decades in this industry and you are still full of so much energy and desire to improve the industry as a whole. It's extremely impressive. What keeps you motivated?
I just love building. I love the fact that on a bad day, something gets done. On a good day, it is liberating because you just see what manpower, people power can achieve. It's just such a joy. And I have to say that some of the best times have been when we've puzzled out. And I'm a puzzler. I'm a natural puzzler. I like construction. I look at the world as being just real life Lego. It's just so joyful. Latterly, I've been disgusted at the reputational losses. So I wanted to change that. Most of the people I know are dignified, honest people who've never had a defect claim or any form of conflict. And yet we're seen as the lower end of professionals. And I just,
Which is ridiculous. It is a complete and admirable profession to go into the construction industry in any way, shape or form.
Exactly. But frauds and shortcuts, and I've been calling it the know-not-alls, I'm against. The lazy people, I did a post where I just showed four lazy workers, one with a bet now phone and one with glasses and a stick. So there's a cohort of people we have to marginalise, or just no, I don't want to marginalise them. I want to call them out and change them. And if they don't change, they should not be representing us on the industry. Australia's GDP will move upwards. Productivity will improve when everybody thinks that construction is the best profession to be in, whether you're a designer, an engineer, a certifier, or a humble tradie and builder like me, although I've got a couple of university degrees as well.
I think both of us are pretty lucky that we both really love our jobs. It's a pretty cool exception to be in.
Look, I wish I could open this window. I'm in downtown Surrey Hills, a beautifully well-renovated terrace of pride. It's a compliment to the modern craftsman, okay, because it's in an old craftsman building. But everything I look out the window was built by the people who are on this call, okay? And why there is any crap and blame, we should be proudly saying, wow. And the other point too, when have you seen a designer pedestal for the beauty and the inspiration that they have brought to your community, suburb, city, state? We never hear about that wonderful accomplishment. And I think that's an indictment.
Gosh, I feel all overwhelmed right now.
That's why we change it. And that's why, if it's any comfort for all of you, I had a lot to do with dragging the industry and not using treated timbers, because it was so sad seeing the owners' faces when they had to spend $30,000 replacing rotted timbers that were allowed to be bought by a builder who installed them brilliantly, but after 5 years, the deck had to be replaced. So I had a lot to do with that.
Could you repeat that, please?
So with external timbers, I had a lot to do with changing the culture from allowing builders and designers to use untreated timbers inappropriately. So this is fit for purpose. And I know you haven't got it on your script now, Jess, but if there was better fit for purpose legislation, the builders would not be scapegoated with quite often product failure. So you can put a pin in that one to all of you there. Press your politicians. And that's the other point too about what I said about resumes. Fill your resumes, please, with true actions that have made the building of Australia not even better for your pocket and better for everybody that you're involved with, but every building that you've been involved with and you've left for posterity is pretty much like the older buildings that I inspect and I say, wow. And what has given me the confidence that Australia can build as well or better than any of the people who had no rules, who had no governments across them. We can build as well or better as long as we basically use the right tools and have pride.
So is there anything else, it is casually dropped that you were involved in the introduction or the better use of treated timbers in decks?
Yep.
What else don't we know
or
about
even
Jerry
class
Tyrrell?
one hardwoods, Jess? I mean, sometimes it was a question of just telling the builder, choose a class one hardwood, which has a 40 to 50 year life, so you don't have any toxins in anything in any of the treated timbers.
What else don't we know about you, Jerry? There must be so much.
There's a lot but it's not about me. It's the fact that I go to work. I think I'm implicitly anxious, and that my ability to solve problems is basically stops me thinking about the pain I saw with a cantilever deck that rotted, or I was poisoned climbing under a terrace when I was a bit younger than you, pulling a fire-rated cable because I didn't know that the termiticides were so toxic. and it took me a long time to recover. So I got rid of chemicals in subfloors, didn't I? So those sort of things. So that if we focus on what we can do. So for all the listeners out there, most of my cohort that buy tools are people who just don't want to have problems. And that really, and all I want to do with every step in my building career is to go out there and build something well that in 50 years' time will look phenomenal. And ideally, it's well designed too, Jess. So please, it's not as simple as just applying tools. It's making sure that what you build with tools is an absolute masterpiece, design-wise, and also affordable. There are lots of stories too, because I'm pushing for off-site work too, to reduce construction time and also to really reduce the construction problem. So there are lots of stories which no doubt we can talk about at another time.
So the app itself, is it primarily it's got the National Construction Code in it in its entirety. Does it have Australian standards as well?
Yeah, it calls up all of the reference documents. So it's misleading out there that the NCC, that that the standards are the only reference documents. The NCC is the primary code. It calls up a process where everything must be fit for purpose, safe. There are all sorts of performance criteria. It then calls up a set of reference documents that includes technical documents, includes some Australian standards, and in my opinion, it calls up all of the basic craft standards to make sure that the building work meets the criteria of the NCC, which is that the building is fit for purpose. But we do, and we have citations. So when you choose a tool that you can find the measurement, you can find the concrete cover, you can find the class of concrete, you can find all the illustrations that help you build it. But if you want to go back and read the clause in the NCC, the clause in NASH, the clause in an Australian standard, the clause in any other standard which might be relevant, then you can go back to that and you can find that in our citations.
So, I mean, the Australian standards are like a couple of $100 each. So your subscription means that you don't have to pay for those. It's all included.
Look, we aren't allowed to say that. So that often we have to say that you have to maintain your subscription with these documents until there comes a time, and I hope the governments will basically say the best way to get cheaper building is to make sure that everything is essentially free. My personal view is I haven't gone to an Australian standard, one, because I can't read it. I disagree. They only contain about 10% of what you need to build well. So that for all of you who are dealing with the largest area of risk in Australia, which is waterproofing, the Australian standard will say falls and shower rose height, but it won't tell you about substrates. It won't tell you about the type of finish you have to put your membrane on. It won't tell you about the return of angles at your cavity slider. It doesn't tell you about all these little things that are a part of the craft of building. The NCC essentially, in my opinion, requires you to do that. So that's the whole point of trying to blend in the craft quality standards, not just the so-called Australian and ISO standards.
So you're saying that the NCC encourages craftsmanship?
The NCC unequivocally calls for good building quality. And the fact that it doesn't call up some of the age-old craftsmanship specifically doesn't mean that it should not be done when it's a minimum requirement. Like, for instance, all doors should be arrased, the corners of it. The standard doesn't say that. But every craftsman that I know, every tradesman I know would arras the doors because, one, it's not a sharp corner that dents or hurts a person, but it takes your paint coating more effectively. So your paint coating doesn't thin out on a sharp corner. Boring as batshit, sorry for all of you people listening, but there are thousands
little things that matter, Jerry.
Oh, the craftsmen, look at me. This all came from hundreds of craftsmen being kind to me and telling me about that, backing off doors, stainless steel hinges, 3 hinges, solid core doors, boring ass. I mean, I go to jobs where I specified hardware 40 years ago that are in absolute mint condition because somebody told me, choose a durable stainless steel product.
Mm-hmm. That must be pretty satisfying. Going back to...
Well, it vindicates choices.
Yeah.
And to all of you out there, I promise you, and you can watch this space, I will have, for the designers and specifiers out there, I will have a selectometer eventually. So you can put in a material and find out everything. It'll probably be AI driven, and it will dump on you when you've bought some sort of hose reel bracket that corrodes in 2 years that was meant to be a stainless steel, but it's not. So I'll have a means by which all of us designers and architects, we can put a choice in there. Or if a builder is going to substitute something, you can shove the choice into the selectometer and it'll say yes or no to it. So,
Brilliant.
but Jess, I'm saying that quite often the problems in the industry are not necessarily the builder's lack of skill. It's a really bad choice that should never have passed the judgment of a wise designer and architect.
I have some metal pegs on my washing line that was supposed to be stainless steel and not rust, and they are rusted.
Look at you. Well, that's what I feel. I bought a barbecue and I love Bunnings, except for choice confusion. So if there are any Bunnings people out there, you heard it from Jerry. Get rid of the carbon eating crap. Unconfuse your customer. Give them really superlative product, save carbon. The trip going back to go and get the pegs, or you can't even get them. But I've got a barbecue that I bought from Bunnings, and I had a beautiful frame for it, and it was meant to be for outdoor use. It rusted in 3.5 years. It was just angry.
Mm-hmm. Not happy.
Not happy. And it's on everybody's watch. But we talk about it. This is a true community cost in that going wrong. We all pay somehow for this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And not only is this app amazing for information, the time saving in trawling through documents and getting answers. Like, time is money in the construction industry. And, you can get answers, well, we said 12 seconds instead of hours and hours.
But the badge of honor is going to be too that you're going to have it there. That if you do know that you've got to have your PowerPoint at least 150 away from your basin, well, you know it. But sometimes you have to convince an electrician, or you're schooling your apprentice and saying, look, you do need to make sure you check these things before you retrofit something that was missing. But also the best practice. I like 40mm handrails. So we've got some best practice there, and we'll be increasingly building on that. I want to make sure that all of the skills from people like you, so people tell me about grabability, people tell me about slip resistance, people tell me about, for instance, matte finishes in hallways in class 3 in hotels, I find is much better than a low sheen, because you're getting glancing light issues with them. There are all sorts of tips that we need to just check on before we specify or we build it.
Talk to me a little bit about craftsmanship. You mentioned this a few times today. I really want to go a little bit further into that with you. What have you seen in your time? Did you study under craftsmen? What's your thoughts and feelings about that in the industry at the moment?
Well, I will unpack that. Firstly, I'll say that all of my trade skills, I learnt without reading anything. I learnt it from people with superb, often from a European background. My bricklaying skills, I learned from a Maltese bricklayer and an English bricklayer. My plastering skills, I ran the molded, the really big, ornate molded plaster cornices. I made them physically for some of the heritage jobs that I did. And I learnt that by cutting templates and running it with casting plaster and hemp on a big flat bench. And I cast the ornate grapes and leaves. I used a rubber mold and molded that in a crock pot from skills that I learned from age-old craftsmen. But I will just shout out, often the TAFE people I know, they say, the older ones said, we had exceptional teachers and they were fantastic, but they did not have resources. But as soon as they were making things out in the workshop, it was a fantastic experience. So the digital transformation, so this is why I'd like to think that our images are illustrations of craftsmanship as well. And shout out to MBA New South Wales. You know what got it over the line there with tools?
Tell me.
It was the older tradesmen wanting everybody to know what they know. And they bothered to deep dive. And tools is not an easy read for those people who've never bothered to look at the songline of craft skills. They hadn't bothered. They just did it the way somebody had told them, and it was rough enough. 2 hinges on a solid core door, and they wondered why it pulled off in 3 years' time. So all of this craftsmanship. So there are a number of directors of the MBA who were right behind the digitizing of craftsmanship and making sure that everybody in their organizations that they employ, but everybody downstream, would be using tools to achieve the craft they want. Craft is really important. Jess, Doesn't matter where you're coming from. You may be an engineer who's never pushed a hammer together, but there's nothing that tells me that he or she does not want the work to be done to a high level, which to me is skill and craftsmanship.
We've got since COVID and the timber shortages, we've got an explosion of steel frame buildings in Australia, and you've got carpenters who are trained in timber framing putting up steel frame buildings, steel framed homes. Do you think that some of the craftsmanship, if learned during an apprenticeship, if you get lucky enough to learn under a builder that's got, more than once, because I know that some builders or some host tradesmen will have they'll be first fix carpenters and they'll do timber framing, and not all of them are builders. If you train under a builder who's got a multitude of skills, you learn more. But if then you get knocked on, you finish your apprenticeship and you're putting up steel frame buildings, you probably lose a little bit there.
But the principles, so you'll see in tools I've got the science of. So I do want the basic principles behind why we do things. Nothing that tells me I haven't installed many steel frames, but the ones I have, I've stiffened the hinge side because it's a steel frame. And if it's not stiffened, so often I put a piece of timber in the hinge side of a jamb because I know that on a heavy door that's going to pull that lighter steel through. And there's a whole lot of specific craft skills to add to. It's called light steel framing technology. Lysites and BHP, and I think it's TrueCore, they're all over this as far as what's needed to be done. But I still think they need to communicate specifically the how-to of the craftsmanship of this new part of basically framing Australian buildings. And it's not a hard thing, but there are specific craft skills that need to be ported across. Do modern tradesmen know enough about that? They are being taught, in their courses. They are being taught about that. Whether they're being taught why, I don't know. And that's where the older tradesmen hopefully can step across from their timber knowledge and say the reason why this is different is this way. The coupling between materials, even though it's different materials, still needs to be important. The fixing of your bottom and top plates still need to be centered at the 450 to 600 millimeters, exactly if it was timber.
If you could redesign how construction is taught or understood in Australia, what would you change first?
Teaching construction. Okay, so I wouldn't change much about the teacher quality. But what I would do, there are two things. I would put every single imperative to make sure that what they were teaching was supported by illustrations. And illustrations exactly, not the two-dimensional 50-year-old wrong sections used, but proper illustrations. Would breaker parts would be nice, but we use some breakouts, some staged sequences in the tools, but I would like to take that even further, that you could build almost in sequence from start to finish. I'd like risk to be really profile. I'd like us to be, whenever we're learning, I'd like people to tell us exactly that this is a high risk thing. Box gutters, for instance, that can tank and overflow. That jam stud, the hinge side stud in a jam needs to be stiff. So in everything we do, there's something that's a risk. I'd also like us to the reason why I probably have had a trouble-free time is because I used to probably take a photograph with my eye of the good quality work that people did or I did myself. So I captured it. So I do want this whole idea, when you do it, you need to keep track of the fact that, if you haven't taken a photograph, you've checked it personally and it's done to a high standard. There was going to be something else I was going to say. I was just going to be saying that it would be really nice. I think, how I've been saying that the knowledge is common knowledge base for architects, designers, engineers, and craftsmen, certifiers. It's the same thing. At the moment, there's the syllabuses across the institutions and the TAFEs and even the high schools. It's inconsistent. So if I was to talk to the construction educators, please get together. So teamwork, we've got 1.2 million homes to build plus the associated community. Why not? And we've got to educate, and this is going to go on because Australia's the place to be. Turn our GDP and growth will really help us. But we need a common rail gauge of syllabus or taxonomy. So let's get the syllabus right. Let's work collaboratively. If any of the TAFE teachers are there listening, don't take this as criticism, but I know about your currency and your competency requirements. It's different across all TAFEs and universities. It should be a common theme. You can all fix that. That'd be a wonderful item on your resume. It's going to make the teaching of what we're talking about, because tools says it all, but it doesn't need to be explained different ways and fitted to different rail gauges to get the message across more simply and to get this $1 trillion worth of construction done skillfully and faster.
Quick question. What's a rail gauge? Is that just
A rail
terminology?
gauge. Well, if it's any comfort, Australia's used to have a number of different rail gauges because each state put in its own different rail gauge. So they had to have different trains in different states because you couldn't run a New South Wales state train to Victoria because it wouldn't fit on the railway. So if that's so my analogy there is, at the moment, we don't have a common Australia-wide syllabus for all things construction and design. And I would love that to be a mission for all of the educators out there. That is, I think tools can fit to anything, can drive on any system, but I'd love the system of education to be based on a single syllabus across the nation. Very simple to fix.
It would also be nice if the National Construction Code was actually consistent as well.
Yeah. Well,
That'd
it
be
is,
great.
but you've still got state variations. But wouldn't it be nice if it worked, if it was built up? Because it was a wonderful idea. But 2 volumes saying this, so the second volume says the same thing. The Plumbing Code of Australia? Go figure. I love plumbers, but it doesn't deserve its own book. Basically, it's a subset. And sorry, and I have worked as a plumber, and I'm dealing with some wonderful plumbing teachers. It doesn't deserve, electrician doesn't, none of the trades deserve their own book because we all work together. It's part of the building. Okay? And everything else, everything that's outside the objective to build well, right, is found in the wiring rules, in the authority rules, in all the plumbing authority rules. All of that stuff is findable. We do not need a separate code for plumbing. Sorry. And I will fight you for it in a loving way.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, loving. Thumb wrestle.
What else was I going to say? I was going to say something about so one of the bigger problems, like we've got your app, which is just a cover-all. Anyone in the construction industry can find the answers they need very quickly, and there's really no excuses now. So get the app, people. But we still don't have enough inspections. So what are your thoughts on that in Australia? Because I think that South Australia has got the lowest rate of inspection in the entire country, which means that it's
Good call. Okay, resume time for all of the listeners. Imagine on your watch, it's a long game, but it could start instantaneously. A person you don't trust, you cannot have them record quality for you. So you have to record the high-risk items, and we will be putting on tools a quality icon of something that needs a photographic record or a slump test or a crack test or an acoustic test. We will be doing that. My dream is this. And I'm saying 0 of my work needed inspecting, except the engineering of a steel slab, the post-tension strands, those sort of things, the acoustic testing that needed to be tested, timber treatment stuff that needed to be verified. None of my stuff needed to be inspected. Imagine a world where the skills and the pride, which is not going to cost anything more, is going to deliver a product that they can keep a record of, that's findable in the new portal, because the current New South Wales portal and these other portals are, again, a constipated mess. But imagine if the record of quality could be kept more easily, proudly, and that when we inspect, I see a subsill and say, that's just so good, that's so cool. And you've got the photo. Oh, yes. I see every aspect of it. A fire damper correctly installed without anything penetrating the 200 millimeters to the fire damper, and they've got a photograph, and I say, whew, fantastic. I've done my job and I haven't had to defect it. And then we haven't had the horror story of the pain and shame of that defect. Quality is essential. The people doing quality are not going to get less work. They're just going to get enjoyable work. And everybody downstream is no longer going to be wasting their Christmases and weekends doing unnecessary rectification and never getting a repeat job because their work is done exceptionally. And in 5 decades from now, everything you've done, because it's getting more and more expensive to demolish and rebuild, people will look at that era and say, Jess did that, Jerry did that, Michael did that. Icon are doing it in Melbourne. They're using quality as one of their calls to action. Taylor up here in New South Wales, there are so many people who want to get it right to start off with. And their work, yes, it is inspected, but you know what? They're not finding anything wrong. It's wonderful.
So what's next for the Tools app? You've mentioned a few things. What's directly in your sights?
Global. I want to do a global version. So I think global construction could all be the same thing. And I have put a shout out I've offered to my UAI people for Palestine and some of the Islamic cultures in Syria, because they need this, because they're going to be rebuilding things badly, in Ukraine. So I'd love there to be a global standard. The thing we're doing now is we're converting everything into an askable option, which will be different from the generative AI that you can see now, which just gives text back. It will give text back, but it's also going to give the illustration, which is the heart of craftsmanship knowledge. And it's also going to prompt you, because when I do a job, if I see something, I might be able, I'll say, well, that's right, but have you considered that the falls outside what you've built well are going to flood the inside of your building? So we will be saying certain things. We'll be trying to prompt people. Not only do they find what they want to find with our Ask Tools feature, but they'll also be prompted anything that they could miss. So that it's learning, and they're going to get CPD points for learning and earning because they bothered to look and be curious. So those features are on the drawing board and they'll be soon coming. But at the moment, you can find most of your answers quite readily. And that's all I want to do. I want to see a mistake-free culture in building, and let's get on with making a lot of money, a lot more profit. And I don't want to be commercial here, but most mistakes in building cost between $3,000 and $30,000 a mistake. Okay. So please think about this. If you can eliminate that, even if tools just helps once a year, but I would say in the early years, you're going to use tools 3 to 5 times a month to get your knowledge base up and to also encourage your team to become scholarly and a craftsman. And then once you've got it there, if you never pull it out, you then know that, oh, I've got it there. And it's almost like a badge of honor. But when you do pull it out, you're probably going to save yourself $3,000 by checking a dimension before it becomes an embarrassment that the certifier says, no, that's not okay.
So every time you pull out the Tools app, you're saving money.
Yeah, and I don't want to be, look, I'd have done this for nothing, but like I did with the treated timber and the chemicals and my works on various standards and getting the inspection process perfected, but it's wasted now because we're finding too much fault. I did that for nothing, but I would do tools for nothing. But obviously I do want to expand it, and I do want to get this into a global societal solution, because I think when Australia's built well, it's fantastic. When the globe is built well, it's fantastic. There's going to be a lot more free money in the economy if we're not making mistakes and doing rework.
Absolutely. Final question, Jerry. What is the one thing out of everything that you have learned that you want the listener to know, if you had to pick one that you've learned in your career? Don't give in to the negatives. Be great, all of you. Okay? The thing is, nothing has changed on the watch of most of the associations and politicians that I've looked at. And I've sent them letters, I've lobbied them. Nothing has changed. Please don't be negative. Don't give up. I'd love you guys to reach out to Jess, to reach out to me and just say, I made a difference here. We fixed the New South Wales portal. The portal's good. There are so many things which we can do something about as long as we don't criticise and just give in. And if everybody does a little, I say nobody does a lot. I'm expecting all of you to do a little and watch this space. I want to see $1 trillion worth of really wonderful construction, housing Australians faster because of people who are on this call. Thank you, Jess. Thank you so much, Jerry. This has been an incredibly uplifting and energetic conversation. Your energy is absolutely infectious, and I really appreciate your time. It's been really fun talking to you. Thank you, Jess. Now, we have given you a discount code, Jess20. Yes. I
And
was
that
just
allows
about to
you-
mention that. So anyone listening, if you would like to download the Tools app and have a go, have a tour of it, you can also use the code JESS20, discount code offered by Tools to the Building Sociology Potty listeners. Thank you very
Well
much,
done.
Jerry. This has been great.
Thank you, Jess. See you.
Okay, bye. That is all for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. There'll be another episode in a fortnight, so if you would like to listen into the types of conversations that I have all the time, please subscribe on your chosen platform. Rate the show, leave a comment, whatever you like, share with your friends and family. I'd love for you to spread the word about the Building Sociology Potty. There's a link in the episode description where you can head to a landing page, and there are some show notes there with relevant links and a full transcript of the show as well, and also links to my socials. So if you're not already, I'd love for you to follow along there too, as I share lots of building science and building biology tips. Thanks again. I'll be back in 2 weeks, so until then, happy healthy building.